I'm Javan. I'm the policy manager at TCI. My job is to break down policy so that young climate advocates can understand it in order to push their advocacy even further. Today, I'm going to be breaking down some of my top picks for climate policy wins in 2021. I'll be talking about 5 policies from different states that have passed into law this year and how they contribute to the overall efforts of addressing the climate crisis through policy. I've already broken down the policies in a blog post, feel free to check out the link. But in this video, I'll be going over them quickly and highlighting why these bills matter in the overall movement in climate advocacy. LD 99, phasing out fossil fuels from pensions in Maine. LD 99 came out in Maine, where the climate initiative was first founded, by the way. It was a huge win because it was the first fossil fuel divestment bill of its kind to pass. By divesting from the fossil fuel industry by 2026, Maine's government retirement funds would not be funding fossil fuels anymore. This policy is important to highlight because this is a climate issue that does not get much attention, honestly. Many people, including climate activists, could be providing funds to the fossil fuel industry through their retirement funds and not even know about it. They're perpetuating the climate crisis, and they're not even aware of it because it's concealed behind the complicated retirement process. This policy not only brought attention to this issue, but went even further because the sponsor, Representative O'Neill, stated that the fossil fuels were financially risky investments. This policy will continue an important conversation, and if it is found that these investments are not profitable, divesting from these will not only be an ecological decision, but it would also be an economic one as well. The California-China Climate Institute. The California-China Climate Institute has existed prior to this law passing, but was officially codified, meaning recognized in law, this year. This law is important because it addresses state role in the international community. Federal climate legislation is not easy to pass, as we have seen with the many hurdles in passing the Build Back Better Act. This law, it gives states who can lead in the climate spaces an opportunity to do so. California and China are 2 large economies. Having their team of experts work together on climate change solutions is a great step towards addressing the climate crisis. Perhaps other states who are passionate about climate change can also follow suit, and this could be a way to build momentum towards climate solutions outside of the complications of Washington, D.C. Maryland HB 70, Energy Efficiency and Net Zero Homes. House Bill 70 amends a currently existing law that requires the state of Maryland to procure net zero homes for climate housing. This law provides preference to those procurement contracts to small, minority-owned, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses. This bill addresses an important issue in climate spaces, the intersectionality of them. Intersectionality is important in many areas, but it is especially important in climate spaces because climate change affects us in so many different ways. This law brings intersectionality into the conversation by allowing diverse groups of people to be a part of the solution. Without intersectionality, climate solutions might benefit some communities and hurt others. One example of this is climate gentrification. This is when homes or properties that are better suited for climate change are bought by wealthy home buyers, which can lead to rising property values and displace lower income households who can no longer afford to live in that neighborhood. This bill brings in multiple communities and is a good start in making climate solutions intersectional and work for all communities, not just some. Hawaii HB 243 and SB 474. The next policies have a personal importance to me. I come from the Pacific, and the next policies are 2 bills based out of Hawaii. These laws require agencies to identify areas that are susceptible to sea level rise, and once these areas are identified, require that anyone selling property that is in danger of sea level rise disclose it before the property is sold. Highlighting this bill is important to me because I want to remind everyone watching that the Pacific is on the front line of the climate crisis. Our ways of life are in danger, and this needs to be talked about in all climate spaces. Islands like Hawaii have relied on their beaches to attract tourists to sustain their economies. However, as sea level rises, those sandy shores shrink and the hotels on the coast are in danger of flooding. Legislators were concerned that this bill would affect tourism, but the alternative of doing nothing could be even more dangerous. Pacific Islands need to think about how they can survive the climate crisis despite not being the largest contributors to it. And the international community needs to be considerate of how their actions affect others, such as how their contributions to the climate crisis affects vulnerable Pacific communities. Colorado HB 21-1180. I included this last bill because it covers a controversial topic in the climate space, which is biofuel. This bill sets aside $2.5 million in grants for research and projects that demonstrate the benefit of biofuel. I invite everyone watching this to do your own research and educate yourself on biofuel, because there is arguments to be made on both sides. Proponents of biofuel will argue that while fossil fuels sit in the ground and do nothing until they release carbon when burnt, biofuels will absorb carbon from the air during the time they are grown, making them a better choice than fossil fuels. Opponents of biofuel will argue that biofuel still releases carbon dioxide and that renewable energy is still the best alternative. Hopefully, the research done in Colorado will provide more data so that people can make their own decision when it comes to this alternative fuel source. I know that young people today are frustrated. They're frustrated with decision makers, they're frustrated with businesses, and they're frustrated with society for not doing more on climate change. My hope is that learning about these policy wins in 2021 will energize young climate advocates to know that change is happening. We should celebrate these smaller wins and use this as momentum to push for even more change to solve the climate crisis. If you're interested in being a part of the solution to the climate crisis, go to theclimateinitiative.org and become a TCI ambassador today. Thanks for watching.